afternoon. So today we will be discussing about the immune system. I hope you all know what is immune system. So what is immune system? Do you have any idea what is immune system? I hope everyone might have heard about this immune system during these pandemic days, right? So you must be knowing what is immune system. So what is immune system? It is nothing but the defense mechanism which is acting in our body against the any foreign body which is entering into our body, right? So actually it is divided into two types. One is self-recognition and the non-self-recognition. So you all know that even our body cells is having the different type of the cells. So those cells can also be recognized as the foreign body, but those cells will be recognized as the self cells, and the cells which are the particles which are entering from the foreign bodies are considered as the foreign body, and it will be recognized and rejected out by the immune cells. Okay, that is the function which will be done by the immune system. So then what are all the particles which will be entering into our body is that nothing but the bacteria, viruses and the fungi. Apart from that, some of the toxins are also entering into our body. These toxins will also be considered as the foreign body, and also it will be rejected out by our immune cells. Okay, and these immune cell systems are made up of the different organs, cells and also the proteins. So we should not think always that immune system is only the organs or the type of the cells. Even some of the proteins which is secreted by the cells also functioning together to perform the immune system. Okay, so we will be discussing in detail how our immune system is functioning in our body and what are all the different types of the cells which are involving in the immune system, as well as the organ and the protein, as I said. Okay, how these all together making our immune system to be strong to fight against the pathogens. Okay, so where and how do we defend against disease pathogen? That is the biggest questions we are having, right? So that is the biggest question we are having, that where and how do we defend against the disease pathogens. So first we should know what is immunity. So where during the pandemic days we all might have heard the word called the immunity. The only solution for us to escape from the COVID-19 is we should increase our immunity. None other than protect us from the COVID-19. So what is immunity? It is the ability to resist infection or the diseases. As I said, most body cells and tissues are involved in the implementation in the immunity. Okay, it is not, we are always thinking that immunity is just an lymphocytes or the immune cells. Even I told you before also, not only the lymphocytes and the immune cells are involving in the immunity, and other proteins are also involving in it. Anyway, we will be discussing about that in the later slides. Okay, then these immunities are divided into two different types. One is the innate. Okay, innate means another, not specific. Innate means when we born, okay, we could have got some immune cells from the mother or some immunity from the mother, because when as soon we get into the yet, we will be prone to many pathogens. So those pathogens, we should be able to fight against those pathogens, right? So when we were in the mother's womb itself, we have developed some immunity, and also these immunities are called as the non-specific immunity. Okay, what does it mean? What is non-specific means? It is not specific to the particular pathogens, right? It is not specific to the particular pathogens. What are all the foreign bodies? Either it could be a bacteria or virus or any toxic substance which is entering into our body will be spelled out by the immunity. Okay, that is called as the non-specific immunity. Okay, and then another one is the adaptive defenses. Okay, what is adaptive means? We have to get adapted to the certain situation, right? So soon after we get into the classroom, we will not get into the friends, right? So slowly we are getting into the trend. Similarly, so our immune cells are also developing the immunity against the particular pathogens. Okay, for example, COVID. So when we got the COVID-19 first time, many people have died due to the lack of the immunity. So later all the people have developed the immunity against the COVID-19, and again when we are prone to the COVID-19, we were not prone to the death, because we already have the adaptive immunity. Adaptive means our immune system has been adapted, right, to fight against the pathogens. Okay, that is also performed by our body cells. So especially the lymphocytes called as the B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes, as well as the natural killer cells are playing role in it. So I will tell you what it is in the forthcoming slides. Okay, so we should not think that only the innate immunity is playing, or the adaptive immunity is only playing to fight against the pathogens. Sometimes these two factors, these two immunity, both innate and the adaptive immunity, work together to fight against the pathogens. So we will be discussing about the mechanism, how it is doing in the forthcoming slides. Okay. So as I said, there are immune systems are divided into two different types. One is the innate immunity, another one is the adaptive immunity. So innate immunity is the immediate response. Soon after we get the pathogens, we will respond. Sometimes even we can see the rashes in our skin, right? So what does it mean? We are saying that as the allergy, right? So some unwanted thing has been happened in our body, so that our immune system is responding for that. That's why we are getting the immediate response, right? Sometimes we will be getting itching in our nose and all. So you could have noticed that, right? So innate immunity is nothing but the immediate response to wide array of the substance. Wide array means what? Correct. One particular last slide I told you that it is the non-specific. Okay, and further this is divided into two different types. One is the skin and the mucosal membranes and the barriers. What does it mean? Outer covering. That is the first line defense they will be saying. Okay, what they will be calling it as first line defense. So our body is protected from the pathogens by the skin, and also mucous system which is present in our nose as well as the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, and another thing is the non-specific internal defenses, that is the cells called as the macrophages as well as the natural killer cells, and the chemicals such as the interferons and the complements, and the physiological responses, that is nothing but the inflammation and the fever. So we will also discussing about in detail in the forthcoming slide about this. Okay, so similarly if you see the adaptive immunity, it is nothing but the delayed response. So when the pathogen is getting into our body, what will happen? Our body should recognize what it is first, right? So it should first recognize what it is, then only it will start to respond to that, then it will produce the immunity against that pathogens, then it will kill out or lyse out. So that's why we are calling it as the delayed response to the specific antigens. For this we are having the two different type of the cells called as the T cells as well as the B lymphocytes. T cells are involving in the cell mediated immunity, and the B cells are involving for the humoral immunity. Humoral immunity is nothing but the directly producing the antibody against the pathogens. So cell mediated immunity means what? So it is giving signal to the another cells to produce the antibodies. It is mediated by another cell. Okay, that's why we are calling it as the cell mediated immunity and the humoral immunity. These B cells will be developed into plasma cells. These plasma cells will be synthesizing and releasing the antibodies which will be acting against the pathogens. Okay. So as I said, innate immunity is nothing but the non-specific defenses which will be having the 7 categories. First one is the first line defense, as I said, skin, mucus, mucosal barriers, which will be keeping away the hazardous materials. Hazardous materials includes pathogens, bacteria, fungi, or the viruses, as well as the toxic substances which is present in the environment. Okay, and second, then as I told you already also, that when the pathogen is getting into our body, our skin will be protecting us. Even our skin is having the sweat gland and all. So the sweat is also lies out of the acid or chemical which is present in our sweat, also lysing out the pathogens. Or in case if it is entering into the nose, right, we are having the small hairs in our nose, that will be acting as a filter, right, that will also filter out the pathogens. It is even entering into our body through the mouth. Mouth is also the another opening by which the particles will get into our body, right? So in case if it is getting into our body, we all must be knowing that our digestive system is coated with the mucus, right, for the easy movement of the food, right? So that mucus will be secreting the immunoglobulin A. I hope you all know what is immunoglobulin. That is nothing but the antibodies, right? So those antibodies will fight against the pathogens, or it will lyse out. Apart from that, even our stomach is having the HCl, hydrochloric acid, that will also lyse out the pathogens, right? ஏன்னா வந்து the acid ல வந்து pathogens வந்து survive ஆக முடியாது. Okay, so these are all the called as the primary defense mechanism, or the first line defense. Okay, and then if we take the second line, it is nothing but the phagocytes. As I said, neutrophils and the macrophages are acting as a phagocytes. What does it mean? Site means another cell. Phago means engulfing. Okay, those cells will engulf the pathogens. Okay, and then immunological surveillance. What does it mean? It will decide which cell to be survived and which cell should not be survived. If these NK cells, or the natural killer cells, find any abnormal cells in our body, it will kill out that, or it will destroy. It will decide whether those cells will be survived or not. Okay, and then another thing is the interferon, that is nothing but the chemical messengers. Okay, so these interferons will be released by the immune cells to give the signal to the other cells to produce the antibodies to act against the pathogens. Okay, and then inflammation, complement. So complements are nothing but the another. Even I told you sometimes, right? So when we are going to the hotel and we are getting the complement, what does it mean? To enhance our interest to come to that hotel, right? So similarly, to enhance the cell adaptability to produce the immunity, some of the complement molecules are also used, that is nothing but the proteins. Okay, and then inflammation. What is inflammation means? Become or some rashes we will be getting, right? What does it mean? As I said, it is the immediate response to the pathogens. ஏதாவது ஒரு pathogens நமக்குள்ள வந்துச்சுன்னா என்ன ஆகும்? It will be giving the immediate response. What does it mean? It is producing the antibodies. It is fighting against that, right? And then last one is the fever, right? So when our body temperature is getting increased, what does it mean? It is increasing the metabolic rate, right? So when the body temperature is increased, the pathogens cannot survive in the high temperature, so it will be died. So we will be discussing about this also in detail later. Okay, so first line defense, as I said, it is the outer layer of the skin, that is the air epithelial layer of the internal passages, and it will be secreting the materials which will be flushing out the pathogens, as well as the some of the secretions which is produced by the mucus, okay, or the glands, will be killing out or inhibiting the microorganisms. And another thing to be noted is we all know that our body direction is the single direction. நம்மளுடைய digestive tract it will not be come out. So if any pathogen is getting into our mouth, and it will be moving towards the another digestive tract, and then it will be absorbed, and then it will be passed out through the urine if any pathogen is present, because our digestive system is the unidirectional one. So these are all the physical barriers which will be defending against the pathogens. And second line, okay, second line, as I said, second line of defense is involving the cells as well as the chemicals or the proteins, right? So before we go into the cells, we should know what are all the different type of the cells which are involving in the immunity production, or which are the immune system, right? So before that we should know how these cells are produced in our body, okay? So I hope you all know that what is WBC, blood cells, RBC, blood cells, right? So we could have studied from our school days that most of the WBC cells are the immune cells which are fighting against the pathogens, right? So how these cells are produced in our body, right? That should be noted first. That process is called as the hematopoiesis. Hemato means what? Blood. Poiesis means synthesis, right? So how these blood cells are synthesized, and we all know that bone marrow. Bone marrow is the place where the blood cells are synthesized or the produced. What is the lifespan of the WBC? 2 weeks. What is the lifespan of the RBC? 120 days, right? So first what will happen is that in the bone marrow, the blood cells will be started to produce, okay? All the blood cells except the T cells, T lymphocytes, okay? All the blood cells including the RBCs and the other type of the WBC cells will be directly entering into the blood vessels or blood capillaries except the T lymphocytes. These T lymphocytes will be forwarded to the thymus where it is getting matured to the complete T lymphocytes. The T lymphocytes which is produced in the bone marrow are called as the pre-T lymphocytes. Pre means what? Primitive, right? Primitive, immature T lymphocytes. So if these T lymphocytes should be mature, what it has to do? It should undergo further development, right? Further development is taking place in the thymus, okay? And then after it gets matured in the thymus to become the mature T lymphocytes, it will be getting entered into the blood vessels, okay? So if you see that we are having the in the blood, of course from the school days we are studying this. So the most important component of the blood is the erythrocytes, that is nothing but the RBCs, and then we are having the platelets, okay, and we are having the WBCs, that is the neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, monocytes, and then we are having the lymphocytes. Those lymphocytes are divided into B lymphocytes as well as the T lymphocytes. So these B lymphocytes are directly liberated from the bone marrow, but the T lymphocytes will pass through the thymus in order to get mature to become the active cells. Okay. Okay, so we were discussing, we know that what are the cells involving in it, right? The first mechanism, right? So you know about the what is innate immunity, what is adaptive immunity, right? So what are all the process taking place in the 7 categories which are taking place during the innate immunity we discussed, right? So now we are going to discuss in detail about each and everything, okay? So the first one is the phagocytes. Phagocytes means what? Engulfing. Okay. Those if the bacteria or release toxic chemicals are present with antigens. Okay. That is the process of the phagocytosis. These could be done by the neutrophil, macrophage, eosinophil. So though there are many WBC cells which are acting as the immune cells, but if you take the phagocytes, these are all the 3 different type of the cells which will be acting as the phagocytic cells. Okay, what are all those? Neutrophils, macrophage, eosinophil. So first we will be seeing macrophage, how the macrophages are killing the pathogens. Okay, so if you see here, when the infectious agent is engulfed, okay, it will be keep opening the mouth. When the infection pathogen is getting enter into our body, those cells will capture that. Okay. Soon after it capture, the macrophage cells will be having the lysosome. Lysosomes are nothing but the enzyme which will be lysing the protein molecules, right? So what is the coating of the, you know that even virus is coated with the protein. Even if you take the bacteria, cell wall is made up of the proteins. If those proteins are cutted out, what will happen? That will not get proliferated. That will get die. Okay. So those lysosome will be making the phagosome along with the pathogens which enter into the cell, and then it will be making the phagolysosomes that will be destroying the infectious agent, and after it get destroyed, it will be excreted out as the residue. Okay, and then it will be passed through the other way to come out from the body. This is how these cells are acting as the phagocytes, and it is called as the, what it is called as the cleanup crew. I hope you know this, right? So these phagocytes are called as the cleanup crew. Okay. So if you see among all those cells, the neutrophils are the first one which will be entering against the pathogens, and then only the macrophages will come out. But eosinophils, I told you, right? Another phagocytic cell is the eosinophils. So these eosinophils will be acting only against the parasitic infection or the antigen antibody complexes. What are all the parasites you could have studied? Plasmodium, right? Worms la படிச்சிருப்பீங்களே invertebrate right? So these eosinophils will be fighting against or engulfing those parasitic organisms. Okay. So how these eosinophils are destroying the parasites, right? So from the continuation of the last slide, right? So when the eosinophil recognize that some parasites enter into our body, for example plasmodium, you all must be knowing about that. A plasmodium is a parasite, right? So when the plasmodium is getting into our body, when the eosinophil is recognizing the parasite, what will happen? This eosinophil will start to produce the chemical called as the cytotoxic chemical. Cyto means cell, toxic means we all know it, dangerous, right? So those chemicals will be produced by these eosinophil. Those chemicals will act over the parasites, okay, and then it will kill out. Okay, and apart from that, it will also phagocytes the antigen antibody complexes. What does it mean, antigen antibody complexes? When the antigen get into our body, right, antibodies will be produced and then it will get bind, right, and then it will be trying to destroy, right. Those complex will also be destroyed by the cytotoxic chemicals. And then basophils and the mast cells. These are all the other type of the what? WBC cells which will be acting as the immune cells. So what is happening here? Pro-inflammatory chemical secreting cell. It is called as the pro-inflammatory chemical secreting cell. What does it mean? It is increasing the inflammation. It is increasing the inflammation, and apart from that, it is also doing the vasodilation. Vasodilation means what? It is increasing the diameter of the vascular system, that is the blood vessels, by secreting the protein called as the histamine. Okay, another molecule also produced by this basophil called as the heparin. Heparin is nothing but the anticoagulant, right? This heparin is the one which is making our blood not to get clot. If our blood get clot, what will happen? It will get stuck into our blood vessels, so that will lead to this death or some disorders as well, right? So and then another molecule which is produced by that is the eicosanoids, that will be increasing the inflammation. Inflammation is nothing but the reaction against the pathogens, right? So that is the role of that. So next is, how do phagocytes invade the area of infection or injury? Right? Imagine I am having the injury in my skin. You can see that. And the பையனுக்கு என்ன இருக்குது நீல வந்து அடிபட்டிருக்கு. But வந்து we all know that if you are not having the skin is the primary barrier. If we are not having the skin, what will happen? Pathogens will get into or invade into our body easily. So, when it is getting invaded, so these yellow colors are the pathogens. Okay, how these immune cells are working together to eradicate that pathogens or to kill out the pathogens, and we are going to discuss now. Okay, so first what will happen is the first step is the release of inflammatory or the chemotoxic factors. Soon after our cells recognize that some pathogen is entered, what will happen is these chemotoxic factors will be released. Okay, and then that will give the signal to the other cells, and also it will be displaying the stamps. Okay, and then it will be making these blood cells to move to the margin of the blood vessels. Margin வந்து போறதுக்கு வந்து பண்ணும். ஓகேவா? And then it will be diaphoresis means what? It will be coming out. Okay, it will be coming out from the blood vessels. Okay, and then it will be coming out the blood vessels. It will be secreting the molecule called as the chemotoxins, and these chemotoxins will be fighting against the pathogens, and then it will be killing out. So this is taking place in the 4-way, or this is the one way it is happening. If not, what is the other way is that these cells will be producing the plasma proteins. That plasma proteins will be fighting against the pathogens, and then it is killing out the pathogens which is trying to enter into the or invading through the inflammation or the infection which we are having in our skin. Got it? So what is the process taking place? So inflammatory factors, as I said, it will be released by mast cells, and then with the capillaries become permeable. What does it mean? The capillaries can allow any particle to go out as well as the get in. Okay, and then margination means what? WBC slow down. WBCs will be started to slow down in the flow. It is moving along with the RBC, right? So it will be started to slow down, and then it will align on the vessel wall because it should move out to fight against the pathogens, right? And then diaphoresis means what? That way the blood cells leave the vessels and enter the common places, and then it will be secreting the chemotoxins. That chemotoxins will fight against the pathogens. Okay, this is how the phagocytes invade the area of infection or the injury, if you are having any injury. Correct? Got it? Shall we move to next? So another important thing, in the first slide itself we got to know, right? NK cells, that is the apoptosis initiating. Apoptosis means what? What is apoptosis? Cell death, right? So it is cell death means what? Even suicidal கூட சொல்வாங்க, right? So அது வந்து என்ன பண்ண வந்து ஒரு செல் சாகிறத தான் நம்ம என்னன்னு சொல்லுவோம், apoptosis அப்படின்னு வந்து சொல்லுவோம். So these apoptosis could be done by the special type of the cell called as the natural killer cells. That is also one of the immune cell which is present in our body. Okay, so these natural killer cell first recognize the unhealthy or the unwanted cell which is present in our body. Okay, நம்மளுடைய பாடியில வந்து if these are any unhealthy or the unwanted body, these NK cells will recognize, and then it will start to produce the chemical called as the perforin or the granzyme. Okay, it will start to produce the perforin and the granzyme, and this perforin means making the pore inside in the wall of the cell. Okay, this perforin will make the opening pore in the cell wall, and then the granulocytes will enter pore and causing apoptosis of the cells. Then what will happen? That cell will die. There is no then if it is dying out, it will be coming out, right? So that is called as the apoptosis. apoptosis. This apoptosis can be done by the natural killer cells. What are the natural killer cells? Role of the natural killer cells. It will recognize the unhealthy cells and it will be secreting the two molecules, that is the perforin as well as the granzyme. That perforin will make the pore inside in the wall of the cells, and thus granzyme will get into that and then it will be killing the cells. Okay, got it? And another molecule, right? So far we were discussing about the cells which are involving as the innate immunity. So another molecule we saw it, right? It is not only the cell, other proteins are also involving in the immune mechanism, right? So that is the interferons, that is nothing but the signaling molecules released by viral infected cells. Okay, for example, I don't know whether I told you in the class or not. For other classes I said this. So actually when the COVID-19 is getting into our body, did you heard about the term called as the cytokine storm? Did you? COVID. So actually many people they were saying that lungs la வந்து தண்ணி கோத்துச்சு, நிறைய வந்து lungs la வந்து தண்ணி கோத்துச்சு அப்படின்னு வந்து சொன்னாங்க. கரெக்டா? பட் வந்து அது வந்து என்னன்றது வந்து தெரியாது இல்லையா? So what is happening is அளவுக்கு மீறினால் அமுதமும் நஞ்சுன்ற மாதிரி தான். So okay, இந்த cytokine should be produced, okay, to give the signal to the other cells to activate, to produce the antibodies. But what the COVID-19 has done is that when it got into our body, it misguided our immune cells to produce the more cytokines. It misguiding our cells to produce the more cytokines. If more cytokine is produced, what will happen? It will be giving signal to the more number of the cells. So all the cells will be producing their cytokines. So what if I need this much of the cytokines, if I am having this much of the cytokines, what will happen? This will be accumulated in the lungs, and then the lungs la irukra alveoli la vandu, alveoli is the packet, right? So that these cytokines are accumulated, then there is no diffusion of the oxygen between the alveoli as well as the blood vessels. That's why people die, right? So interferon is the signaling molecule. It should give the signal. Okay, I want to tell to that girl. Okay, what I am doing? I am giving to Sophia. Okay, give to her. If it is going through the proper channel, fine. Or else what will happen? If she is giving, if not giving to Aruna, she is giving to both, what will happen? So it will be spreading fast and it will secrete the more cytokines. Storm na enadhu? What is called a storm? புயல். தேவைக்கு அதிகமான, கரெக்ட் தானே? தேவைக்கு அதிகமா இருக்கு. ஈவன் வந்து பிரீஸ், விண்ட் அதெல்லாம் படிச்சிருப்பீங்க. கரெக்டா? அதெல்லாம் நம்மளுக்கு வந்து தேவையான அளவுக்கு இருக்கணும். அது வந்து ஸ்ட்ராங்னா என்னது? தேவைக்கு அதிகமா இருக்கும்போது what it is doing? It is doing the disorder. It is called as the disorder, right? So similarly, cytokine was more produced by our body due to the misguiding by the virus which is entering into our body. Okay, so that will be leading to the storm and that will lead to the death. Okay, so when the virus is getting into the cell, just imagine that this is the infected cells. These infected cells will be producing the interferons to give the signal to the normal cells to synthesize the enzymes that interfere with viral replication. First, what we have to do? We have to cut the replication of the cells. If the cells need to get replicated, what it will do? It should get replicate the genetic material which is present in it. That needs the enzymes or the protein. So if it is not synthesizing that protein or enzyme, what will happen? Replication will not taking place. Another interferon signal is to the natural killer cells. So try to identify the unhealthy cells and then destroy it. And then another thing is that it is giving signal to the macrophages. Macrophages are nothing but the engulfing phagocytic. Okay, then it will engulf and then it will destroy. So like this it will be doing. So interferons are nothing but the signaling molecule which will be giving the signal to the other cells to be alert or to fight against the pathogens. Okay, So then I told you about the word called as the complement proteins, right? So complement means, as I said in other,